Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Inland Empire Coaches Talk, sponsored by BSN Sports. Today I'm with the football coach from Redlands East Valley, Rich Lunsford. Rich, thanks for being on the program.
I appreciate the invite, and I'm glad to be here.
So tell folks at home a little bit about your background. You're coming to REV now from Arlington High School in Riverside, so tell everyone kind of your background coming from the Midwest out to California.
I started coaching and teaching in Indiana. I lived there for roughly the first 34 years of my life. I began, obviously, coaching like a lot of coaches have. You begin at the freshman level and the lower levels, special teams and position coaches, and I kind of worked my way up through the system. I've literally been a position coach at every single position except for offensive line throughout my life. I've coordinated offenses, defenses. I've coordinated special teams on the varsity level. So then, I met my wife, who lives in California now, but previously she had lived in Indiana as well. But I never knew her when she lived in Indiana. That's the weird part of the story. That's the funny part that catches everybody's interest. So we're 5 years apart, but we grew up 20 minutes away from each other our whole life. But with that 5 year separation, we never went to the same school, the same grade of school level at the same exact time. Mm-hmm. So she moved out here to work with her uncle in a business in Redlands, and I was back in Indiana still. She came back to visit her parents over Christmas time. She came to the same CrossFit gym I worked out at. Obviously, I got the big heart goo-goo eyes for her when she walked in, saw her work out, went over, approached her, talked to her, went on a few dates, and then, the rest is history. Now I got a ring on my left finger, and now I'm living out in California. Mm-hmm. The Pat McCarthy, the longtime coach at Arlington, retired and resigned from his position around November-ish of, 2020 now? Probably 2014, 2015, somewhere around that time frame. Mm-hmm. And when I was looking for a job to come out here, that popped up like literally within 2 months after I started looking. Mm-hmm. And it was a PE teacher and a head football coach combined. And I was like, well, this has got to be some sort of a sign that I'm supposed to be going out there. I'm supposed to be moving on with this relationship with this girl. So I applied for it, Skype interviewed. They called me the next week, offered me the position. And I said, you do realize I still live in Indiana, correct? They're like, yeah, we'd like you to be out here by February 14th or February 16th, right around President's Day time. And I said, wow, that's a pretty quick, swift move that I'm going to have to make here. But, obviously I did it and was there for 3 years at Arlington, and now I'm getting ready to start my third year at REV.
Nice. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Michigan originally. And the culture shock I'm finding a lot of Midwesterners when we move out here is very different. And vice versa, a lot of Californians don't understand snow. They don't understand the necessary things of the 4 seasons. Like, it's right. Interesting the culture shock you go through. And you basically jumped in feet first.
Yeah. And I came out here back in around February when it was the hottest February that you guys had ever had. Mm-hmm. I remember when I got here, the first day I was on campus at Arlington, they were introducing me to the football team and all the players and the staff members. It was 88 degrees on like February 16th or something. And everybody that I talked to kept saying, don't get used to this. This is not normal. This is not normal. This is not normal. I was like, oh, well, I thought California was all about the sunshine and the great weather. They're like, yeah, but in February, we don't get up to the 90s like this normally. Like, this is not normal. And I was just, that was my first interaction with it out here. I'm like, well, I'm coming from back in Indiana right now. It's like -6 with a wind chill temperature of -20 something. So this is a complete change to me. So it took a while for me to get used to the heat, and I believe my body acclimated to it now, and whatever. It's no big deal to me now when I go out and it's 100 degrees. I'm just like,
I remember coming to my first football game when I moved out here, and I'm in a t-shirt and jeans. And people are freezing and bundling up. I'm like, what in the world is going on?
I remember the first time I got up in the morning when it started getting chilly out here for Californians. So you're talking 75-ish or a little under 75, and that's when it starts getting chilly to people, and that's getting cold weather. And it was probably like, I got in my car I think in the morning, and it was like 68 or 67 degrees, something like that. And I remember looking at the thermometer and seeing that and going, I'm getting a little chilly. I got to turn the heat on my way to work in the morning. And I kind of made a mental note to myself, don't ever let any of your friends back in Indiana know about this, man.
Well, you and I go to the same CrossFit box now, and I still give Mary trash all the time. I'll walk in, and I'll be in shorts and a t-shirt, and she's all bundled. Yeah. It's freezing. I'm like, no.
Absolutely. There, I'm kind of getting along those ways. I don't know, maybe because I'm getting older and whatever. But when it gets down, starts dipping down below 70, I'm putting some long sleeves on and pants or whatever, maybe a jacket or a beanie or something. But it's still nothing compared to the negative temperatures and the wind chill that you get back in the Midwest. So I'll gladly take this type of weather any day of the week.
Well, that's very true. So you came to Arlington. Arlington was a struggling program when you took it over.
It was struggling not because of, it was only struggling because of the tragedy that happened like 2 years prior to me getting there. The death of a player is obviously the kiss of death to a team and a program, and nobody ever wants to see anything like that happen. So it was only struggling because of that. Pat McCarthy did a great job there for 16, 17, 18 years, and then when something that tragic and that heartbreaking and just hits the entire community, it's definitely going to take a violent sport like football, and it's going to take it's going to take some lumps and some changes through it. So that is the reason why why I was struggling at that time.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure, obviously we've had a lot of different types of coaches on here, but football is very different in the fact of how many players you have to manage. And at Arlington, you weren't having players come out because of that tragedy. So how many players did you have your first year that actually came out for varsity?
So when I got there, the year before that, they didn't even have a JV team because of the loss of players. They said they were I remember talking to Ryan McCarthy, Pat's son. He was still on campus as a campus supervisor, and he had coached with him obviously through everything that occurred. And I remember sitting down and talking to him, and just trying to get a little more insight from somebody that went through it. And they had to continue. They said it was basically just putting one foot in front of the other day by day. It wasn't even about X's and O's or football or lifelong lessons. It was just about moving through the grieving process and being able to continue on after a major tragedy like that. So they said they went from somewhere roughly around 100 kids in the program to like 52 in the program. So they took like a 50% hit from one year to the next. And that's obviously going to take its tolls. And if you don't have a JV team, you're obviously going to be struggling because those guys, there's no JV team program, so your younger guys are not getting a year of game play. So it's obviously going to harm the program.
Absolutely. And also you're going to have to ask players that might not be a two-way player to be doing a lot more two-way positioning versus being able to have an offensive team, a special teams, a defensive team, and really trying to save your players down the road, especially when you get to the dog days of the season.
Absolutely.
Because injuries add up.
Real quick.
So then you brought Arlington back. You made it to the playoffs in 2 of your 3 years there?
Yeah, we went to the playoffs 2 of the 3 years there.
And then you took over REV.
Yep.
Which everybody knows.
I mean, you want to talk about filling some big shoes in 2 different places. Like I said, Pat McCarthy was at Arlington for a long time. I remember there was shirts that they had that were 12 years of making the playoffs, 13 years of making the playoffs. They were consistently making the playoffs over and over, in league championships that he had, several of them. So obviously I stepped into some big shoes there to fill. And then, as everybody knows, out on the West Coast and even more in the whole world, the Bruick name, Dick Bruick, obviously, a national name known in high school football ranks, and then obviously what Kurt did at REV. So everybody knows the Bruick name and the Bruick, the Bruick tree of coaching. The branches cover a very, very wide area in the Inland Empire. So yeah, filling in at REV after Kurt Bruick I was definitely stepping into some very large shoes.
Now, what surprises, good and bad, came in your first year?
I mean, the biggest thing, and I knew it was going to happen because it happened to me at Arlington as well. It's funny because I only brought one coach over with me who I've been coaching with. It was too hard to get some of those other coaches at Arlington to come on board and move with me as well, just because they would have to take such a major pay cut, and the travel time to come up there was just too big for them to stay teaching at one school and then traveling up, from Riverside to Redlands back and forth. So they weren't able to go with me. So the one coach that I took with, we sit there and talk about it all the time, how it's kind of just been almost like a deja vu of how it happened at Arlington the first 2 years there to how it has happened at Rev the first 2 years there. Many similarities to how everything went in the first 2 years going into the third year are the same. So the biggest thing for me was just people were not jumping out of the bushes to come coach, to come help out coach. So finding a coaching staff at both places when I did it was very hard, but it's even been harder at Rev because the Bruick coaching tree, the branches reach out so far. So there were tons of people that were just like, I'm not stepping into that situation with you.
I think also, and a lot of people that don't know this, Redlands is interesting. You and I both live there. It is very much old school Americana on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. It's almost what I remember feeling in the Midwest in Michigan, where the 1950s called and they're like, we're good. Like, we still have the bowl. If you're not from Redlands, then they don't trust you right away. You have to really build equity in the community before they'll really embrace you.
Yeah.
But once you become a brother of Redlands, then everything's good. But I remember the first time I came to Rev when I took over your guys' school, I sat down with Rhonda and I went to the U of R. I've been in Redlands. I've worked around and known Redlands for 10 plus years, but Rhonda didn't know me. But then I do the octomole one time and all of a sudden she goes, wait a second, you're a Bulldog? Yeah, I did my math. She's like, oh, and all of a sudden my boss is like, what in the world is going on? And she goes, oh, you just needed a Redlands. Because that's how they are. That's how that community is.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. I mean, just the long blue line that RHS talks about and how long, and I mean, obviously that school's been around for 100 plus years. So there is, that is very much that way in Redlands. It's kind of everybody that goes to school there kind of stays around the school and comes back. I mean, there's so many staff members at Rev that are graduates of Rev and graduates of schools in Redlands and that are still there, that stayed back and came back to teach and be a part of the school and be a part of the culture there. So yeah, I mean, it was tough. Luckily, I through CrossFit, which CrossFit was, when I first came out here, was huge in Redlands. There was like 7 or 8 gyms just in Redlands alone.
There's 3 left now?
Yeah, there's 3 left now, I think. But at that time, there was just so many of them that a lot of people knew me through the CrossFit community, that kids, or they were members of the CrossFit gym that I was at the time, worked at Rev and had family members that worked at Rev. And so I kind of got in that way. They kind of pushed me to apply for the job, the people that I know that are associated with Rev right now. So I kind of, quote unquote, had that in with the Redlands community through those people. But still, at the same time, the people in the football community had no idea who I was. Yeah. All they had seen was, well, he's from Indiana. He went down to Arlington for a couple of years, had a decent run, but now can he step up with the big boys? Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely been one of the things that's been hard to get past and get through. And I'm only on year 3 there now, so they've only known me in the community for a little over 2 years now. So hopefully things are going better. And I've talked to a lot of people in the community, so I am trying to be, a little more present in the community, knowing more people and getting around. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Now, obviously, also Rev has had a metamorphosis, being the new school originally, because you had Redlands for, I think they're going on their 131st year this year. Yeah. That's been around almost since time immemorial. Then Rev came, and I remember everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's a new school!" Da, da, da. And Rhonda talks about that she had soda money all the time, and how her athletics department needed for basically nothing for her first 10 years at Rev. And then now, right before you came, that stopped. So talk about a little bit the challenges as a program that you see that the community can currently support.
Well, obviously, everybody knows in the Redlands community the number one challenge is not having our own field, our own stadium. That's obviously evident, and it's been, that's the elephant in the room every time that it's talked about, when you're talking about sports in the community. So that's obviously the biggest challenge, number one, because every single game is an away game. You're getting on the bus, you're getting on the road, you're traveling for every single game that you play. So obviously that is, a big stumbling block that you got to go upon. But other than that, I don't really have any there. So far everything has been fantastic. The community's been great. Everybody that in the school has been great. The staff members, the principals, the administration. I mean, everything's been fantastic along those lines. Money hasn't been a problem. When I got there, they wanted to help me out as much as possible, so they got some money together to help make some changes to the things that I wanted to do and the way I wanted to run the program and the culture I wanted to bring in. So, along those lines, things have been fantastic.
Nice. So culturally, you've been across this country already, and you've had a lot of great inspirations, and you've stepped into some very large shoes. What is your stamp? What is your culture that you try to impart on your kids?
I've always been about building the kids, the young men in my program up to be the best fathers, brothers, husbands, members of society they possibly can be when they leave my program. So I try to instill in them the best characteristics I can that are going to last a lifetime, that are going to help them in situations down the road when they're struggling or they're facing adversity or they're facing tough times, that they could lean back on some things that were instilled in them through our football program that are just going to make them the best young men or the best adults at that time, that they could possibly be. So that's the number one thing that I want to do. And, I try to do that the best I can through just building the relationships with them, letting them know that I care about them as a person more than I care about them as an athlete. So that's the biggest stamp that I want to put on them. And then obviously the brotherhood and the family environment that you bring in the sport of football, it's so much different in that regards than every other sport. I don't want to make it sound like I'm knocking every other sport that's out there, but the game of football is a lot different, what you have to put yourself through and put your body through on a daily basis just to practice. Mm-hmm. You're beating yourself up, you're beating your teammates up, the old cliche of the blood, sweat, and tears, but that's real in football. That's real on a daily basis in football. It happens. So, that is, you want to be able to look down the line at your teammate, your brother standing next to you and see him doing the exact same thing you're doing and putting himself through it and putting himself on the line and knowing, like, you look back and think, all right, I got him. That's my brother. I got him. I'm going to do everything I can for him. So those are the two types of things that's the kind of stamp that I really want to put on my guys.
Excellent. I know, like, when I'm watching inspirational sports movies, most of my favorite ones are all football related. There's some great basketball ones out there as well, but for me, like, have you seen Grader?
No, I have not seen Grader.
So Grader is actually technically a B or a C film, but it talks about the Arkansas program and the fact that they actually had an All-American who was a walk-on, and it tells his story.
Okay.
Because working with being a developmentally disabled, working in an area that realistically everyone told him he shouldn't be there, he'll never make it, and then his story and the things he went through and how he inspired a Division I university is one of the greatest stories, I think, in sports. And even the NCAA still has an award named after him as a walk-on because he was the first All-American walk-on in all of NCAA Division I. So I think that sports, especially football and that brotherhood you're talking about, can transcend a community, can inspire a nation. I think we need that right now. Outside of us not getting haircuts the way we were used to, and you have a legit Nebuchadnezzar beard going.
I've been growing this since we got March 14th, I think it was, when that was the first date where they shut down schools.
Yep.
And so I have not shaved it, just trimmed it up in different areas, and made sure it doesn't grow all the way up by my eyeballs or whatever. But I've been allowing this to grow for a while, and it's out there. It's out there. I've been getting comments on it a lot lately about just how big it is, actually.
It's funny because I was on the road to San Diego State when I got the phone call from my boss in the Mountain West, and he's like, yeah, Mike, we ain't doing it this weekend. Turn around, go home. I'm like, all right, Jim, whatever you need.
Yeah, it's definitely been a different time, a weird time since March, and how everything's been playing out. Kind of the roller coaster of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of been the ups and downs and the roller coaster of it all. And, we're trying to get back to a norm, but I don't know if we'll ever have a normal, quote unquote normal again, because, just the major changes that have to be taken from this point on, the precautions that have to be out there, to ensure the safety of everybody.
Absolutely. So how have you been inspiring, trying to give that family culture during this pandemic? I know everyone's probably more accustomed to Zoom now than we ever thought possible.
Right.
But what are some of the things and strategies you've implemented in order to really work with your team and continue to have everybody plugged in?
It would have been nice to buy some stock in Zoom back in March, huh?
If only we had the Back to the Future time machine where I can go back.
That'd get some people in some trouble with some inside information if they would have known about that beforehand. But so obviously when the school year left and we were in March and we were on spring break, so we were one of the last schools kind of to call it off. Because we were waiting through the spring break time frame because we already were off school. So we were waiting through the spring break time frame to find out if something was going to change or something was going to happen. And then when they realized that, all right, this is not going to happen, there is going to be no changes to it, and they called off school, then it was kind of just a scramble. And I think every teacher and every coach was in the same boat. I remember talking to, our baseball coach, our basketball coach, our badminton coach, that I'm close friends with. They're the Duceys and Bill Barrich. And we're going through things and just kind of picking at each other's brains about, what do you do? What are you doing with your guys? What are you going to do with your guys? And I talked to a parent I knew whose son was playing basketball at Citrus Valley, and she was giving me this is what they're doing on a daily basis. And then I talked to some of my buddies, my old coaching buddies down here in Riverside to find out what they're doing. So I think it was just kind of, sports and teaching have always been that way. You kind of see a lesson or you see a drill or something from some coach and you want to try to steal that from them and take it and then implement it in your own way. So I think that was kind of a lot of the ways of how I went about it was just, I like how that's going, but I need to adapt it and change it a little bit to fit my guys in my program, what we're doing. So yeah, we've been on Zoom. I mean, I don't know how many gigabytes of data I got on my laptop of Zoom meetings that we've had just with football. So, and so that's just what we went. We obviously with the school, you had your set schedule of time that you had your classes that you had to log into. And so I had, my football team, all the guys that had to log in for class at those times. And then when we ended the school year, we, like everybody else, we began our dead period. So there was no contact whatsoever then. And then when we opened up after that, we were still obviously on the quarantine and lockdown and no practices. So we went to virtual practices on Zoom, just to try to get that team together. You look on your screen and you see 65 little boxes of your teammates are logging in and doing the stuff with you at the same time. So as of right now, that's the best option that we could do. I don't see any other better option than that because we can't have in-person meetings. You can't have large group meetings. Those are all things that we cannot do per our school rules. So the best thing that we could do is just get on Zoom and, put them through a workout, their own body weight workout of moving their body around and working on some things. And then you do some playbook installation and watch some film. And, that's really the best option we could do right now. And I've had a solid amount of attendance for it. Obviously, it's tough to, I can't require them to be on it. I strongly recommend them to be on it.
Yeah.
I tell them every time we're on there that, I commend them for being there, for doing what they're supposed to be doing, even with the eyesight, having no idea down the road when this is going to actually come to fruition and they're going to be using this because nobody knows still. CIF's not coming out to the 20th with what their decision is, but I tell them every single time, eventually we're going to play. Like it's going to happen sometime. It might not be in August, it might not be in September, it might not be in October, it might be in January. We don't know, but eventually we're going to play. And are you doing what you can right now to ensure that when we do get back on the field that you're ready to play and ready to be successful for your team? And the majority of my guys that are coming back are.
Yeah, I love what Dave Serrano says when he was at Tennessee and now at Northridge. You can't get ready. You have to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that constant strive to be ready. So if on this Friday it comes out and they come out a little bit early, hey, you're going to have 2 weeks to get ready. All right, you got to have that plan A, B, C, D, E.
Right.
And it's a very fluid situation. I think of Moneyball, adapt or die.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of how we're looking at it right now.
Yeah, and that's again just to piggyback off that. Like I said, when I talk to my guys, the players, every time it's just if they do come out next week and say, all right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start in August as regularly scheduled. Redlands is a huge sports community, so I can't I can't see that community not pushing to have their sports out there. You know, like I said, it's a very large sports community, and that community gets behind their sports all across the board. So I couldn't see them saying, "Oh no, forget it, we're not going to play sports this year." I mean, I obviously could happen. I can't. I'm not. I can't predict the future, but it'd be tough for me to see what I've seen the last couple of years in Redlands, of the Redlands community not saying, "Man, we need to have sports out there. How are we going to do this? Let's figure a way." So I tell the guys, if that does happen, at least 60 guys that have been here consistently, you're mentally ready. You're mentally ready. Nobody's going to be physically prepared for football because with the wear and tear that goes on a daily basis. But mentally, you guys are going to be ready for what we do.
Absolutely. So as we kind of try to navigate this new normal, whatever it is, are Division I coaches 2, 3 reaching out to you? Because we don't know how the combine's going to look. We don't know how recruiting is going to look. I talk to a lot of Division I baseball coaches, obviously, because that's a lot of my world. And they talk about, we have camps that people went to and whatnot. But how are you helping your kids get to that next level? Is there a combine that you guys have created, working with local facilities in the area that are still open?
No, I haven't set anything up like that yet. I've talked to the majority of coaches that I still communicated with a lot of them on the phone and through email, and they have our guys on the radar and they're waiting to see what's going to happen. I'm kind of in that boat the same. We're waiting to see what the plan is going to be, what the plan is going to be set forth. I've had some things in mind about that just to get my guys some stuff on tape, so to speak, some videos of them doing some different things. But right now, I feel that it would be a disservice to the kid if I did that, because obviously in the spring, we're doing it, the spring and summer, we're doing the majority of our strength and our speed training, and we haven't had that. So I wouldn't want to put some of my kids out there with slower 40 times and less strength than they've had in the past, because they haven't gone through, they've had so many months off of the true strength program that we put together. So I don't want to put that together for them right now, because I don't feel that would be a service to them that's going to help them out. I don't want them to look bad on film. If I got a kid that I know through my whole entire speed and strength training that could, he could squat 400 pounds and he could run a 840, but right now he's only being able to squat 315 and he's running a 5'2", well, that doesn't look as good when the coaches are seeing them. So I don't want to put them in that situation that's not going to help them right now.
Absolutely. So the CBL is changing this year.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that and what you kind of expect now that Beaumont is coming in. So
I can't get away from Jeff Steinberg.
You can't?
I can't. I guess it's impossible. Okay. I thought leaving from Riverside and coming up to Redlands, I was going to get away from him. No, he goes out to Beaumont, and they're coming to our league now.
So you're going to have run and gun regardless.
Yeah. So obviously, what he did at Rancho Verde, he did a phenomenal job there, and every year we had to play them in league. And they would just whoop our butts. Even my last year there, when we were 8-3 and we were coming to play them, and we were 7-0 on our high horse, we knew watching them on film that they outmanned us at every position. So you go through that I go for that for 3 years with him, and he's just whipping my butt left and right. And then I'm like, all right, finally get away from him for a little while, and now he's coming back in the league. So I'm like, oh, this son of a gun. But I love Jeff. He's a good guy, man. We talk frequently. So I have no ill feelings towards him, other than, hopefully I could get a little revenge on him now with him coming in with Beaumont. And, no knock to Beaumont at all, but, they're coming from, the Mountain Pass League, and the CBL is, it's a grinder. Mm-hmm. The CBL is a grinder league, and I learned that real quick. Coming up to Redlands, a lot of people, that was a lot of the knock on me, I feel, in the community was, well, yeah, he did good at Arlington, but Arlington's not REV, and they don't play the competition level, and they're not on the same page as some of these things. So let's see what he can do when he comes up here playing with the big boys.
I always find it funny because in sports we talk about it all the time. Oh, the SEC and the Big Ten are real football. The Pac-12 is more of a run and gun. Like, it's not the same. and they're not equal, blah, blah, blah. And you hear it in every league at every level.
Yeah.
But then you'll have, in baseball, like a Fresno State or a Boise State in football all of a sudden come up and slap everybody, and they're like, no, hi, we're still here.
Yeah.
We can compete. But it's interesting the different styles from one conference or league to another.
It's, and I think along those regards, like you're saying, is, yeah, at one time, a Boise State or a Fresno State could come in and play that, that Big Ten, that SEC team and get a win, but it's week in and week out what the difference is there. And I just hired a brand new teacher this year, not a brand new teacher he's taught before, but brand new teacher for us on campus, Rick Covington, and he's coached at Harupa Valley and he's coached at Norte Vista before, and I've told him I've told him numerous times when we've had our meetings, like, just get ready, because week in and week out you look across the line of scrimmage and you're seeing 2-3 Division I football players consistently that are game changers, week in and week out that are across the line from you. So, obviously there's that in other leagues as well, but I mean, this is a week in and week out grinder in the CBL, and I found that out real quick.
Yeah.
So
now talk about your non-conference schedule and how you're basically trying to schedule now, being at REV versus Arlington, because, I mean, like, you watch certain programs like Centennial, De La Salle, Long Beach Poly, and the teams they play, you might as well be watching a Division I college football game because of the talent that's being put out on the field. So how do you try to make your mix when it comes to non-conference?
Excuse me. Well, I mean, Kurt Brewer did me no favors whatsoever scheduling. And we've talked about that before at CBL coaches meetings and whatnot. And we talked about our off-season schedule, and I was just look to him and I was just shake my head and say, "Well, you didn't do me any favors." But it wasn't his fault. Well, it was his fault because he built up such a good program and such a great name for the Rev football program that a lot of schools just didn't want to play him. And every school that that is close to Redlands were already playing because they're in our league. So it was hard to schedule that. And then obviously with the numbers that have dropped in football across the nation, we haven't had a major numbers drop. I haven't had less than 125 guys in the football program since I've been there for 3 years. So we always have a freshman JV and varsity team. So when you are trying to schedule with some teams, a lot of teams can't guarantee you that they'll have all three levels. So if we don't get a guarantee from a school, I'm close with Jason McManus at Citrus Hill, and we were trying to schedule together, but I said, "Can you guarantee me 3 levels?" And he said, "I can't guarantee you that, Coach. I'm just not sure."
Yep.
And I can't schedule you because I can't schedule a freshman in a varsity game and then try to search for a JV game too. It's just too hard to do. So, some schools you can't schedule that way, and then other schools just don't want to play. So, for example, we've had numerous opens. I'm finally to where I'm the one scheduling my entire schedule now, all 10 weeks of it, and all my preseason games. Sorry, and I'm finally at the point now where it's my choice is what I want. So when we sent out inquiries to schools and emails and messages on message boards about getting games, I literally was getting Trinity League and Centennial immediately answering me back. "Let's get a game together. Let's play together." And I said, "No. Sorry, guys, I'm brand new at this school. I'm not going to play you guys yet." But I didn't have a choice. Yeah. So I ended up picking Santa Margarita, and obviously they have been the bottom dweller of the Trinity League for the last couple of years, but they still whooped our butts last year, so that tells you a lot. And, I've seen the film of them playing St. John Bosco and Mater Dei and Servite, and, I mean, good Lord, the level of football that is played in the Trinity League is amazing. It's really, really good. And Cajon played Servite last year, and I know Nick Rogers doesn't want to play them again. And I don't really want to play Santa Margarita again, but, we don't have a choice. When you start doing well in the CBL, nobody else in the Inland Empire really wants to schedule a game with you. So you have no choice but to start looking on the OC. And the Trinity Leagues are always free and always open to play whoever.
And then you're also looking down in San Diego as well.
Yeah, again, I thought I had a schedule with Aquinas, and then Jordan got back to me and said that him and Long Beach Milliken had a mix-up in the scheduling, and they had one more year to play on that contract, and they couldn't get out of it. So then I was scrambling again, and then Mission Hills from San Marcos gets a hold of us, and at that point I think it was April-ish, And if you don't have your schedule together at that point, you might not ever get your schedule together. So I said, all right, let's go ahead and line it up, and we'll get them for a couple of years. And Mission Hills is, they whipped our butts last year too. Don't get me wrong, we took a lot of butt whoopings last year, but another top-notch team down in the San Diego area. So it's been hard to schedule the last couple of years.
Now, with you guys you were in Division II, and now you're right at Division III, correct? Mm-hmm. So how does that play into your scheduling at all? Because obviously you don't want to play the same teams twice.
Right.
I mean, now you don't have to deal with Jeff as much anymore, but before it's like you look at different teams like, oh, there's no chance I want to play them, and then play them again when, because now they know your style, they have a much better playbook on how you are as a coach.
And that happened to me year one.
Mm-hmm.
We played Norco in the preseason, and then they give us Norco again first round in the playoffs. And, it kind of – obviously I'm not in the room, or I don't have any say-so in how CIF decides these games that are being played in the playoffs. But, we always thought that they weren't trying to play anybody that had played previously.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't even think, as we're going through like all of the odds and the options, and we finished second place in the CBL that year, so we're kind of throwing names around and trying to put this little bracket together ourselves, and we never once thought there'd be a chance we play Norco because we already played them in the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought for sure it wasn't going to happen. And unfortunately for us, we got them right away because we were clicking. We had gotten together a groove, and the play calling and the players that we had. And we had some outstanding players that year. Kurt did a great job building those guys up, and they were football-minded kids and loved football and got after it day in, day out. And then the change into the systems and the changes of the coaching staff, and it was we were right at that point 10 weeks into the season where we thought we could hit the playoffs if we got the right draw.
Mm-hmm.
That we could hit the playoffs and win a game or two and actually make a little noise in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course we draw Norco right away, and it's like, man, way to really stick it to a CIF. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and it's funny, like being around CIF as much as I have since '04, and the pairings that some of them come out with, either they do a one team absolutely zero favors, or they'll do it the same way where you're talking about you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then you see some of the other parents, you're like, and it's kind of like the grass is always greener on the other side. You're like, but I should have been
right. Well, and again with that draw, it would have been, if we would have beaten Norco, we would have went and played Upland, who we played in the preseason as well in the second round of the playoffs that year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like we were at a point where the draw that they gave us was nothing along the lines of what we thought it was going to be, because we were like, oh, we've already played Norco and Upland. We're probably, most likely, if you look at previous CIF brackets,
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to keep those games spread apart from the replaying the same team again and give you some other games.
Yeah.
But then that was the year that they said we're going to really cut down on travel and try to keep games closer, and we're just like, oh, well, there you go. We're guaranteed going to get one of them, and we hit them.
Yeah, they say that, and then I see a Kern County school going down to play.
Yeah.
Orange County School. I'm like, yes, okay. So let's talk about the evolution of what you want to bring to REV moving forward. Because we always tell people like, hey, you need to have a 1-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan. Mm-hmm. What evolution things would you like to see REV evolve over the next 2-3 years?
Well, I mean, and I've told my guys this year, I've got a great group of seniors coming back, and these were all freshmen when I got there. So when I walked on campus, these were my guys all second semester. So I had these guys from the beginning. So they were coached by a different freshman staff, and then they never really were, technically coached by Kurt. Mm-hmm. So, so to speak, in football terminology, these are my guys. So every kid in the program now is my guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've told these guys previously that I messed up at the beginning. The way I came in and what I was trying to do was wrong. And I told him, I said, it takes a big man to be able to stand up in front of you, and I'm the leader of the program, and I'm the leader of everything that we do here football-wise. I said, so you've got to understand that it takes a lot from me to be able to look back and reflect on what I've done the last 2 years and realize that I took some missteps at the beginning of my career at REV.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the steps that we're going to take now to get it back on the track of myself. And what I believe in, and my morals and my everything, my philosophy of what I want the program to be. So I didn't do the things that I normally have done in my coaching career the first 2 years at REV. So I reflected back upon it. You going 0-10, that'll have you taking some looks back upon yourself and things that you did and choices and decisions you made. And so, my first thing that I wanted to do was just, really put my, I don't want to say fingerprint, but I wanted to put my thumb down on everything training related with the program and everything we did. So I went really hard. We went really hard in the weight room in the training of what we were doing in the off season, and made it a lot more demanding on the guys. So that was the number one thing. My second thing was getting a coaching staff around me that were 100% loyal to me and my vision of what we're doing. And now I've got that. I added some of my former players from Arlington to the coaching staff this year that I coached at Arlington, that started coaching with me at Arlington as some volunteers my last year that I was there. And then when I left, it took them a couple of years to get, they got a little more coaching under their belt, and now they come up with me. I've added some close friends of my defensive coordinator and coaching and playing buddies of his. So I've kind of surrounded myself with my quote-unquote my guys everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I figured in order to bring back the success that Rev has seen in the past, I've got to do it the way I want to do it, and I can't try to do it the way Kurt did it in the past. Yep. So those are the mistakes I made at the beginning, and I've adapted and changed and reflected upon the problems and the mistakes that I've made. And I think going forward to the future, we're going to be a lot more successful because everything is going to be understood, and the vision that's coming out of my eyes and my mouth is going to be being passed on from all my coaches and all my players on to everybody else.
It's interesting that you bring that correlation, because I remember an interview with Mike Babcock when he went from the Ducks to the Red Wings. And the Red Wings had Scotty Bowman, who's the most winningest coach in the NHL, created the left wing lock. And he tried
Side note, I'm a Blackhawks fan, so I absolutely hate the Red Wings.
Well, I'm from Detroit, so but it's interesting how he's like, I tried to have the left wing lock because I had Lindstrom, Yzerman, all of the people that had won Stanley Cups, and he tried to do Scotty Bowman, and he goes, I'm not Scotty Bowman. Yep. And it's interesting that how many coaches come into that dichotomy, because you have that lineage, that right. history, and you're like, I don't want to rock the boat, but it's not my boat.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth right now, one of the really things that opened my eyes to it was I had a player, he was a senior on last year's team, and great kid, really good football player, got a great football mind, wants to go into coaching and teaching down the road, and he's moving out of state, or else I would have had him come in with me and help out, but he had to write an essay for a scholarship. And I was the one. It was the scholarship from our football program. So I read through his essay, and a lot of it was him comparing and contrasting the different coaching styles between me and Kurt. And once I read that, and it kind of opened my eyes to it a lot more from a player's perspective, that really helped me out to know that I've got to go down my path and stop trying to do it. Like you said, I'm not Kurt Brewer. We're different. So I've got to stay true to myself, and that's the path that I plan on taking from now on out.
Absolutely. So as we close, because we're a little bit over than what we normally do, but that's fine. What would be one message you'd like to give to your players, to the community, especially right now with COVID and all the strange that's going on?
I tell my players all the time, man, I love them. That's the biggest thing that I want them to understand, and especially their parents to understand. I love those guys. They're like my children. I don't have any children, so every year, I'm gifted with 30 seniors and 28 juniors and I tell them, I love them like they're my own kid, and I'm going to treat them, along those same lines. I've had numerous kids that have rough backgrounds, and they're missing a parent here or there, or they're having struggles with a stepfather or a stepmother or whatever, and they come to talk to me, and I sit them down and I say, dude, you're a great young man. If I could adopt you, I would. If you were up for adoption, I would adopt you in a heartbeat, man, and have you be my kid. So I just, the number one thing that I want to get out to all of them is just, that I care about them. That I care about them, I love them, and I'll do everything I can to help them out.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on the program. Again, this is the Inland Empire Coaches Talk brought by BSN. Be safe. God bless. Bye-bye.